sometimes customers get sort of, well, what did you just say? I tell them, between us, just the two of us here, quantum computers are toys. And what I mean by that is that today, there's very little that you can do on a quantum computer that you cannot achieve classically. Today, they are beautiful, expensive, complex toys.
Toys, yeah.
Welcome to Entangled Health. I'm Thomas Ehmer, and I like to sit where quantum science, health, and consciousness research overlap and have the conversations that never quite fit into conference or reports. When I sit down with someone, I usually carry one question I can't stop thinking about, and let that be the starting point. From there, we follow whatever actually matters to the person in the room, even if it has nothing to do with the original plan. At some point, a quantum computer will also pick one listener question for us using real quantum randomness, just to see where it takes us in the conversation. My guest today is Yuval Boger, quantum computing leader, chief commercial officer at QuEra, longtime podcast host of the Superposition Guy, and violinist. And, as of very recently, the creator of two fictional characters, Quantessa and Atomique, who seem to be able to say things Yuval can't quite say as himself, and that's exactly where we are going today. A quick disclaimer, these are personal conversations, a co-creation between my guest and me. Nothing here is an official statement from any company or from my employer or anyone else.
Good. Yuval, thanks very much for making it so even the infrastructure works.
Of course, it's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome on the show. So who you are, what you do? No, just kidding.
Yeah. My name is Yuval Boger. My day job, and also probably also night job, is chief commercial officer of QuEra. We make the best quantum computers in the world.
Yeah. So I think one thing that I have not understood with you, I mean, you're the superposition guy, but there was this photo of you where you're standing in front, I think it was the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. You have the violin raised, and I was thinking, wow, this guy is having a solo. And then you had this subscript, and he said, well, I'm just practicing, so I'm just giving them the note. Can you tell me a bit more? What was the intention of this?
Of course. So I've been playing the violin since an early age, 6 or 7, something like that. When you start at this age, the violins are smaller, just like the people who play them. And then when I became a teenager, at some point, I started playing on a full-size violin. And the full-size violin was my father's. So my father played the violin, and when I was big enough, he gave me his instrument, which I think is a German instrument that was built near Munich sometimes in the 1880s or 1890s. So it's an old violin, but not a very good one. It has suffered, other than my playing, it has suffered a lot. It's cracked by now. And then after I got married, sometimes after I got married, I learned that my father-in-law also played the violin. He also played the trumpet, I think, but also played the violin. So he had a violin, and I started playing his violin, which is better. And it was really interesting. That violin hasn't been played for 20 or 30 years. We took it to a luthier, person who fixes violins, and said, okay, clean this up if necessary. Let's put new strings. Let's make sure that the violin is in playing condition. And he did that. And over the next 3 months, as I was playing on it, the sound started to open up. It became sort of bigger, better sound. So it was really interesting how the violin, maybe I got accustomed to the violin, or the violin got accustomed to me, or just hasn't been played for 30 years. So it just became better. And to your question, some years ago, I heard on the radio a concert, and it says this is the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. Baltimore Symphony Orchestra is one of the most famous professional orchestras in the U.S. Not as famous as New York Philharmonic or Philadelphia or Boston or Chicago, but still sort of a tier one orchestra. And I learned that they have 1 week a year where they host amateurs like me
Mhm.
and invite them to rehearse and learn and eventually perform on a live concert with the symphony. And it was a fantastic experience because sitting inside the symphony orchestra, sitting inside a professional orchestra is quite an experience. It's sort of the seat that you can never buy in a concert hall. And of course, we learned new pieces. I learned how to play much better. And at the concert, there's a seating arrangement. And in one of the concerts, I've been doing it for several years now. And in one of the concerts, I was chosen to sit in the first stand. So every stand has a professional player and an amateur player. And I was chosen to sit in the first stand next to the concertmaster. And he basically said at the beginning of every concert, one has to tune the orchestra to make sure that everyone is playing the same note. And he gave me the honors. So that's why the photo is me tuning the orchestra just before playing. That's why in the photo, my back is to the audience. If I were really playing solo, my back would be to the orchestra. I did have a small solo in one of these pieces, which probably is sort of the musical highlight of my career. But that's sort of the story behind that.
So you played the solo?
Yes, I mean it's not it wasn't a solo as in a concerto where we were the soloist for many minutes, but it was a couple of minutes of a solo, sometimes in a Mahler piece or in a Shostakovich piece. There's a solo for the first violin, and they asked if I wanted to play it. And I said, "Yeah, of course, I can try. If you're willing to listen, I'm willing to play."
And now you had this exact violin to tune the whole orchestra. Is this a special feeling, or I don't know if it's an emotional thing or if you want to share it? Or
I mean, this of course it's a special feeling. I mean, performing is fun, but in my day job in Quantum, I present a lot. I present in front of customers. I go on the main stages in conferences and so on. And it's like, oh yeah, I can do this every day with my eyes closed. But um, playing even a couple of minutes of solo in a professional orchestra in a concert, that's where my heart rate goes to 200. You feel it sweating all over your body. This is probably much more stressful than any professional situation I can remember.
Yeah. I can just share one thing, and then we go on next, because we did this Iron Maiden concert. I think you've also been there. The Iron Maiden in London, where we have played with the Quantum band, and the fun thing was really for my talk. I didn't practice much but for this stupid solo or this stupid thing, I was practicing. I mean, more than ever I did in my life. I think for 4 months I was playing every day, half an hour. So I have done it all. So you call yourself the Superposition Guy. Your podcast is, or at least the Superposition Guy. So I have in principle, I see you in 4 states. The superposition, at least 4 states. let me check if we find out who what these are. So you started with it, but walk me through your last Tuesday.
As a chief commercial officer, a CCO,
Yes,
I'm responsible for the company's sales and marketing. When I went to business school at the Kellogg School of Business at Northwestern University in Chicago, it's a school known for its marketing department. And when you go to the first lesson in the first class of marketing, the question is, what is marketing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the Kellogg School of Business's view on marketing is they basically say everything is marketing and marketing is everything.
Sure.
But it's a really fantastic job. I mean, of course I don't do it alone. I have a small team and I collaborate with the rest of our executive team. But my job is to connect as marketing, to connect the inside to the outside and vice versa. So basically to understand what is that the market wants, what will customers need, what types of customers, what are they willing to pay, what product they're looking for, to make recommendations and sometimes decisions on what is it that we will build for them, to communicate these requirements to the company and quote unquote negotiate with the rest of the team. Oh, I can't do that. Yeah, yes, we can. This is too easy. I don't agree. I do agree. And then ultimately, once the company has a product, to go out and communicate the value to it and work with customers that want to, as we say, put quantum to work. It's. I mean, every job has its challenges.
Yeah.
At QuEra, I mean, we're not selling hot dogs, right? So we don't have a hot dog stand. So what I mean by that is that we don't need 1,000 customers a week. We don't really have someone who comes in and says, I just met you, but here's $42 million for your quantum computer. That doesn't happen in real life. And so we look to identify and build relationships, long-lasting relationships with customers that are fairly advanced in their quantum journey. As historically a small company, now a mid-sized company, we're not focused on teaching people what quantum is. We're looking for those that understand what quantum, that believe it has value, that are realistic about the expectations. No, it's not going to break. We're not going to run Shor's algorithm tomorrow on any meaningful number. And so if they understand the situation, but they understand the promise as well, and understand why QuEra is the leader in quantum computing, then we want to work with them and do something great together.
And I mean, you just said you've been studying marketing, but you have been studying something else also, so physics.
Yes, I have a master's in physics. My thesis was on fiber optic sensor arrays, so using fiber optics to sense phenomena. In optics, there is the Poincaré sphere, which is used to sort of give a graphical representation of the polarization of a light, and this is very, very similar to the Bloch sphere that you use in quantum. And when I finished my master's degree, I went to my advisor, and so we had this really nice conversation about what's next. And it was sort of in retrospect, it was a key point in my career, because he said, Yuval, you did a fantastic job in your master's, and if you wanted to do a PhD with me, I'd welcome you with open arms, and we can work on this and on this and on that, and we can do all these amazing things. But he said, I got to know you over these last couple of years, and I don't think a PhD is for you. I think you should go and do something else. You should go into industry and use your talents in a different way than a PhD. And so that's what happened. I mean, I went, it was many years ago, but since then I've been working at startups or small public companies and sort of practicing sort of this multidisciplinary thing. So it's interesting that I have both a physics graduate degree as well as a business graduate degree, and I try to create some constructive superposition of both.
Because I think the second state would have been how do you feel as physicist, or when was it the last time you felt as physicist? Are there moments when you are still working with, I don't know, Jonathan or whatever, and then you really say, look guys, I know this better, I've done this? Or...
I haven't been practicing physics in many years, but I've always been in businesses, ran businesses, or been in businesses that had a substantial part of physics. And sometimes it's surprising to people, they just, oh, you're here, you're the sales guy, or you're the marketing guy. Well, yeah, but I've probably written more code than you ever will, right? I've done this and that. I have at least for people in my profession, probably a above average understanding of what's going on sort of physically. So yeah, that's.
You still crave it?
But honestly, when I went to work for QuEra, so first I joked that they barely let me in the door because I don't have a PhD, and even if I did have a PhD, it's not from Harvard. So that was then. But on the other hand, when I first met the QuEra people, they said, "Oh, we're building an analog Hamiltonian simulator." I said, "Okay, great. I understand analog, I understand Hamilton or Hamiltonian, and I understand simulator, but I don't understand what an analog Hamiltonian simulator is when you combine all of them." And I said, "What do you mean? It's an analog Hamiltonian simulator. You just do this." And after a while, I said, really nice people and really amazing technology, but clearly they need some help in communicating to the market what is it that they do and why is it valuable, because not everyone immediately understood at that time analog Hamiltonian simulator.
You've interviewed I don't know 152, 155, whatever person only as a superposition guy. You had another podcast before, I think, if I recall correctly, and you always ask them what they are, well, who they are, and what they do. And what in this time, was there something that you have never been able to ask because you were the host?
The role I play in the podcast as a host, as an independent podcaster. So although I work at QuEra, this is not a QuEra podcast, which is good because then I get to invite people from Quantinuum and Infleqtion and Pasqal and what have you, and IonQ and others. And so I do try to be polite and not say, "Well, but how are you ever going to scale? Is it really going to work?" I mean, I can ask that, but hopefully in a nicer way. And I am proud of the fact that in the 200 plus episodes that I did in quantum, and I did many episodes before that in other fields. I'm yet to piss off my guest, and so usually I tell them I haven't pissed off anyone until now. I mean, I've pissed off many people, but not on the podcast.
Not on the podcast.
And I don't plan to start. I don't plan that you'll be the first one, right?
Yeah. Is this right? Or
I've invited all our competitors, or at least almost all of them. I still need to interview Planck, the German company.
Yeah.
I don't think I had them, but in neutral atoms, I certainly had Atom and Infleqtion multiple times, even in Pasqal. No, QuEra doesn't play a part. I mean, I don't seek authorization or approval. I don't need it. I can interview whoever I want. And it's been working great. And I think ultimately it does indirectly also raise the visibility of QuEra and allows us to do things, because now with all these episodes, more people know me in the industry than they would have otherwise known me. And then I can sometimes leverage that. "Oh, I know you. Yeah. So, okay, now let's talk about QuEra. Let's talk about your quantum journey and where are you and how can we help and so on." So I think it's been helpful certainly to me, but very much so for QuEra as well.
Cool. And the other superposition you showed me just very proud in the beginning, which if you want to repeat the move on camera, but I was really thrilled. I mean, it's a GPT word, but I was thrilled it's to see this Quantessa thing, because wow, Yuval is doing this atomic Quantessa, and when you drew the, I mean, I also play stuff, but when you first drew the Quantessa strip, who were you doing it for? For you or
for myself? Yeah,
for yourself?
it is mine. I started. No, not that. I did. years ago, I did publish a children's book.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, if I reach out, I have here. I did publish a children's book,
Okay.
and it does have illustrations and so on. And it was based on a story I told my kids, and then decided to put it into a book and get someone to illustrate it. And you can actually even buy it on
Yeah,
Amazon
we can link a
if
link
you
to
want.
it.
But no, a couple of years ago, I thought, oh yeah, it would be nice to do a quantum comics. So
Mm-hmm.
I worked a little bit on finding names for the characters and
Mm-hmm.
came up with, Quantessa and Atomique.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking for quantum jokes, and they were just not funny in general. It was all about, being in two places at the same time, or this cat joke and the other joke. And so I just kind of put it aside for a couple of years. And then I don't remember why, but I started at it again and said, okay, now I need to develop the personality. Who is Quantessa and who is Atomique and what do they actually do,
Mm-hmm.
and then get one of the AI programs to draw them and say, no, that's not what I want. I want something else.
Yeah.
I want this. I want that. And then this is really a nights and weekends project. And so I started developing, and then I said, okay, what's going to be the story? And instead of saying I want to tell jokes, I want to teach quantum.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've got in my drawer, I publish now once every week.
Yes.
I've got 100 or so terms that are explained with comics, and an explainer that I think is suitable for, I'd say, college students. Don't need to be a physicist. There are no
Mm-hmm.
equations in there. And then I realized, and I don't know if you know this, because I had this workflow of how to create the story and the comics and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I said, how about I do it in German? I just want to forget English. I just want to do it in German.
And
So I did it in German. Of course, I don't know German, but I did it in German. And we use a PR firm for Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent them the comic and said, well, what do you think? And they said, well, the German is fine, but it's just not funny. The
German feedback.
German's fine, but it's not funny. And so I had to improve it in a way to make it funny. And I did. Now I have a workflow that's funnier, at least, than it was before. I can make it in any language. And the response has been really sort of fantastic in terms of, oh, this is great, and could we do this, and could we do that? And it may very well be that based on this exciting feedback, I'll just turn it into a book, sort of a nice book of comics that goes through quantum terms, and maybe it will help someone get into the quantum business one day.
I just was in, I don't know, today I was in Strasbourg, but I'm traveling on all these things, and we often come back to the point of the need of doing quantum education. The earlier, the better. I mean, there's this Quantum for Children book or Quantum for Dummies book, but I think in the end, this comic strip is cool. I mean, I very much like. So, can you share? This is not hand drawn, so you have a script and then it's GPT or whatever generated, or is it?
It's not hand drawn. No, it's drawn by AI. So it's drawn by AI based on
your stories and description and
based on the stories, but also based on the characters. So I sort of created reference pictures for the characters, because obviously you want the characters to be fairly consistent, certainly within a comic strip and also across comic strips.
Yeah.
If I can tell you additional secrets behind the curtain, Quantessa has this long black hair, and one day I said, she always wears it just, with nothing, with headband or no So there must be different hairstyles. So then I started, okay, these are going to be the hairstyles that are going to happen here.
Yeah.
And so it's getting more and more sophisticated.
And we had a debate. I don't recall with whom, but I think it was with Mike, who sends greetings. Atomique seems to be in a bit of a gender superposition, because I said Atomique, of course, is female. And then he said, no, but look, I said, this is a boy. I said, yeah, it depends on which comic you look. So is this by design, or is it an accident? Or because
No, well,
I was 100%.
Yeah,
it's also your daughter or whatever I saw.
it is not my daughter.
Yeah.
I do have a daughter, but it's not her. And it was not by design. Over time, I started generating some scenes that are not comics, and then you can see Atomique going on a date or going this, and so you can draw your own conclusions. But it was definitely not intentional.
Yeah, because I think this is it's just interesting to see. This is eventually in flow or whatever. It makes the whole story really, at least for me, interesting, because it's it introduces a bit of uncertainty. And as a superposition guy, you mentioned yourself, I think it's a consistent story. That's cool.
And of course, at some point, once you have enough of these comics, you say, well, do I really want to change the characters? I mean, I sort of got used to them.
Yeah. Any cats? Will you feature any cats?
There was yeah, I think there must be a cat here someplace. But yeah, there's going to be a cat. There are going to be a couple of dinosaurs.
Lego bricks.
I haven't done. I don't remember a Lego brick yet, but we can talk about Lego if you want as well. But
yeah, tell the Lego story, come on, if you want.
The Lego story. Well, I think on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, I saw some Lego, AI generated Lego creations, quantum computers, and I think I also got. I remember I got a very, very small quantum computer from Chi Ventures, from QAI Ventures. It was very, very few pieces, but the AI generated Lego was really cool, and so we started generating some more, and then people liked it, and then we say, okay, why don't we just make a calendar of it, a wall calendar? So that was the 2025 calendar was Lego generated. But then we said, okay, but why not actually do one? Let's make a real one. Let's make a real Lego quantum computer is a misnomer.
I have one at home.
So you can say that all quantum computers are toys anyway today. So here's one that's explicitly a toy.
Yeah.
And we got it designed. And initially, I still have one or two of these at home. It's a massive, massive piece. It has over 2,000 bricks. Wow. And it's like a really big box. And then it was a little bit too expensive to make.
Then
we had a smaller one.
Okay.
And now we're actually working on something else from Lego. Yeah.
This is good.
So this has become a tradition.
I was
Lego
pieces.
You could go to QuEra-store.com and buy them.
You can.
Yeah, you can buy them. I mean, you can win them if you're lucky.
I did.
If you on draws or on, but you can go to QuEra-store and just buy your own. Yeah.
Okay, this is good information, because people asked me. So they were visiting me there. I was like, "You want to see a quantum computer? This is what I'm doing." It's still not outpacked, because I think it's so valuable. I don't want to touch it. So I haven't constructed.
You should put it together. The new one actually has lights in it, so it's lit in the dark and.
Rubidium.
So, but let me tell you a story about that. So one day I get a call. So, who are you? And she says, I'm a lawyer, and I represent the Lego group. I say, okay, how can I help you? And she says, well, we notice you're selling these computers with Lego bricks. And I said, yeah, we love Lego. and said, well, I just want to make sure that you correctly put the copyright notice, and this is how you should call it, and this is how you should not call it. I mean, some of the terms I was not as aware as I am today of what's considered a Lego trademark and what's not a Lego trademark, and so on. And so we, of course, we love Lego. We have all 100% good intentions, so we fixed whatever needed to be fixed there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I asked her, well, how did you learn about us? I mean, it's not that we sell thousands of these. At that time, we made 20. How do you know? He says, well, there's this guy who really wanted your computer, and he called Lego, the company, and he said, I want to buy a quantum computer from you. And Lego said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, this one. And then they learned it's perfect. Again, it's perfectly legal. People call it, I think it's called MOC, my own creation. Yeah. So you can make Lego designs and people sell them all over, not just quantum companies. So that's my story with the Lego lawyer.
The lawyer. But is this part of the CCO job, or was it just a fun thing?
Lego? You mean chief Lego officer?
No, yes.
No, well, I think this is such a serious business that doing some fun stuff is good. I think it's good to have a fun side for the company personality. Mm-hmm. So if we do some Lego pieces, and sometimes we give them away, and sometimes we give them to customers, or you at prizes to win something, mm-hmm. that's good. I mean, it's much less boring than giving a pen or a notebook or whatever people give at trade shows.
Yeah, that's true. Socks. Just kidding. You gave
socks, yeah. We certainly do socks. I did that in my previous company and now here. So absolutely. Yeah. We try to have some fun, not just serious all the time.
No, it doesn't. And one thing, coming back to the music thing, so I think there's one part that's also linking us together. So when I was on your show, I guess I think it was in May 2004. I think we recorded 8 months before, and then it took us a bit to release it. And you asked me who you are, what are you doing, and then I think I started. I'm a bit of a superposition guy, and for my band, I'm a keyboard player. And you said, "Wow," and then just moved on. And it was like, "What? Why isn't he following up?" So, was there something that the instinct was, I would like to follow up on this, but I have my structure of my podcast and I must not? Is there something? Because everybody has their own philosophy of doing podcasts, and can you work a bit on that?
So first, people ask me if some people, especially if they're, I get a incoming email or call from a marketing person and they want their CEO to be on the podcast, and I usually say yes if it's connected to quantum. I mean, I've had requests that are not connected to quantum, and I try to politely decline them.
Okay.
But then they say, well, can I have the questions in advance? Mm-hmm. And the honest truth is that I don't have the questions. Mm-hmm. I don't have the questions for me, so of course I can't give it to you. And one reason is that, I've done enough of these, mm-hmm. and I'm in the field, so I have a decent idea what I want to ask. The other reason is that I think that if the questions are prepared, then it becomes way too scripted. Okay, 1, 2, what does your company do? 3, I read someplace that you did. No, I think it's more boring.
Yeah.
Having said that, I try to ask questions that I think are interesting to me and are interesting to the audience. And since the audience is quantum related, as much as I would love to hear about your musical adventures, say, well, we'll do that over a glass of beer, one in a conference and not on the podcast.
Who gives you the focus? So because you said it's a bit separate of your not a
Yeah,
bit.
just
It's 100% separate of your profession, and on the other hand, you still focus on quantum because you just are very comfortable in that zone, or?
well, I'm comfortable in that, and I think again it helps the company as well, and it helps me. Sometimes I ask these questions because I mean, obviously, some questions I know the answers to,
Yeah,
but some I don't. So
yeah,
I get to learn
yeah.
about the industry and form relationships with people in the industry
Mm-hmm.
by virtue of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Now, podcasting has always been something that I do. I started many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I ran one of the. I ran a company that was one of the virtual reality pioneers.
VR,
We
yes,
made
yeah.
this amazing virtual reality headset. You can imagine that at that time I was called the VR guy. And I had the VR Guy podcast where I interviewed these. And then I went to work after many years for a company that made wireless power, wireless charging, so
Mm-hmm.
can transmit electricity over the air safely. And then I became the charge guy, and I had the Charge Guy podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Qubit Guy podcast, and now Superposition. So I've been doing it for many years. It's part of my sort of professional calling card.
Yeah,
Doing podcasts has become so incredibly easier
it is.
relative to 10 years ago because you know AI and
Yeah.
you can clean the noise and you can transcribe and it just takes just less time
Mm-hmm.
to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, but I do try to focus on quantum, though sometimes it's quantum sensing or sometimes it's
Yeah. Yeah.
quantum working, something that's quantum but not quantum computing, which is what we focus on at
Yeah.
QuEra.
Yeah. Because I recall I was. I'm not sure how you prepare for your guests, but I was preparing, of course, for you also. And then I was just checking. There are not so many really quantum and health people on your podcast. I mean, you had these I mean, so on myself, but is this from your perspective, if you really focus on your audience, is called quantum? Do you have a feeling? I mean, many are providers.
Yes.
Any idea of customers, or is it a different for you when you do the interviews? Do you prepare differently? Because I think for the vendors it's quite obvious what you ask them, but for
No,
okay,
I don't prepare differently.
okay,
There are more vendors and customers in this market. It's just an an early market, right?
yeah,
But I've had, you know, I had Mastercard and I had
yeah, true, yes, right,
a
right.
BMW, and
Yeah.
I just recorded the podcast with Corey from Eon,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and so and others as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't prepare any differently.
Okay. And now with the idea, when I reached out to you, I said we could do an experiment. We agreed that we don't have Atomique and Quantessa giving also a voice, while even technically it might be interesting. Maybe that's the next next level of going for a movie. But having said that, if I would ask Quantessa, maybe she could give an answer, or you can say no. But just let's things. If I would ask Quantessa one thing that she would think about quantum computing that everyone in the industry knows, but knows is true, but nobody dares to say it loud because she's Quantessa and she can maybe things that. So you are no longer Yuval.
Well, I think Quantessa understands that quantum computing is amazing and beautiful and mysterious and all these things. This coming Sunday, I already have it queued up to publish. So and it just happened to be a comic strip about neutral atoms.
Mm-hmm.
And although I didn't plan it this way, this is the week that Google announced that they're starting a neutral atom activity.
What are they?
Oh, you missed that? Really? So they officially are starting a neutral atom activity.
Okay.
And so in the strip, or in the introduction to the comic strip, Atomique has two burning questions.
Yeah.
One, what about IBM? I mean, Google has a neutral atom activity. Microsoft has a neutral atom partnership. Amazon has us as neutral atoms. So IBM so where's IBM? So that's the first thing that Atomique wants to ask. What about IBM and neutral atoms? The second thing is, well, what are neutral atoms anyway, right? And then, of course, Quantessa goes and explains what's going on.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I think, well, sometimes customers get sort of, well, what did you just say? I tell them, between us, just the two of us here, quantum computers are toys. And what I mean by that is that today, there's very little that you can do on a quantum computer that you cannot achieve classically. Now, of course, our hope and plan is that in the next couple of years, that will change, that there are going to be many useful things, not just contrived problems, but many truly useful things that you could do on a quantum computer. But today, today they are beautiful, expensive, complex toys.
Toys, yeah. I mean, before I tell you what I'm really doing useful, because I have written a I-Ching, or a quantum random number generator. I mean, the one thing quantum is really good is running Hadamard gates on real random. And I have prepared it. I started it. I'm not sure it's still in queue. I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but I have prepared another thing. But before we do that, on every stage I'm standing since a year or so, or if people ask me, okay, you do quantum computing, so yeah, kind of. What's the only thing that works? And then I often come back to our paper and say the only thing for me at the moment in time that apparently is not, except random number generators, is not yet fully fault tolerant algorithms, because they won't run. But this thing we did with reservoir, and then quantum reservoir, because I think that's really something that currently, I'm not sure if we understand why it works better. Is there any progress on your side, or you want to share something on this?
So quantum reservoir computing is certainly exciting, but that's not the only thing that one could do that's useful on a quantum computer, especially as it relates to fundamental physics. There are things that you can do today. So using the same computer that we use for the reservoir computing, QuEra, people have done some really nice work on exotic phases of matter and spin liquids and all kinds of physical phenomena that were perhaps predicted but not observed, and now they can actually make experiments on getting individual atoms to move and interact and fall into a particular shape and so on. So even when we spoke 2 minutes ago about quantum computers being toys, I didn't say there's nothing you can do on a quantum computer that you cannot do classically. I just said there's only a few things, and there's a sliver, there's a, it's like you see a small beam of light. There's hope, and you see where it's coming, and it's going to get better and better. But there's not that much that you can do today.
And I think you hinted at this. Let me just reconfirm, because we had lots of discussions when we were shaping the strategy, or what is it, and then differentiating between quantum computers, and Feynman said use quantum to do quantum, and then I always break it down and said, yeah, you could of course use quantum things to do quantum other things, which is more this quantum simulation. Is this where you're hinting at, that you say I take my neutral atoms? I mean, you could do this traveling salesman or whatever, so these optimization things.
So some of it is simulation. The other thing that was done very nicely is certain optimization problems. The nice thing about our first computer, QuEra, that's been on Amazon for 3.5 years, is that if the problem can be mapped into something that's geometry related, then you can use some of the physical properties of what happens when atoms are nearby or not nearby to solve it much more efficiently than if you had to sort of code it in, if then else statements, or write an algorithm, So it's almost like, it's of course not the same, but it's almost like when you put two magnets together, they very quickly arrange themselves in a certain way.
Yes.
You don't have to think about it too much. It just happens because of the physics. So the same thing, we have 256 atoms. You could move them to almost arbitrary locations. You can excite them in certain ways, and they behave like atoms, which is great.
Can you share some experience that people did, or is it confidential? So with this,
no, I mean it's all published. There's plenty of there's a publications page on the QuEra website, both work that we have done as well as work that others have done with QuEra systems. Absolutely, yeah.
So if listeners just want to go there, it's the QuEra web page, and then I'll link it in the comments then. And
great.
One thing, yes, of course, always friends. So one thing that I had thought makes sense to have as a unique trademark is picking questions out of a pool to make random part of the conversation. It's just finishing, so I see that it's at least now it's in the queue. But I have a featured listener question from a person from Mike. And Mike Stiebertakis, who was in it. He said, who is the person who has inspired you the most in your life, and what have you learned from them? Mike, good question.
I was just putting that in the book that I mentioned earlier. As I think about it, of course, family, and some people say my father and so on. But I think that my high school physics teacher, I was not into physics before high school, and he made me see the light. And I came out of high school knowing that that's what I wanted to study in university and so on. Now, of course, life takes a certain turn, as we discussed. I'm much less of a physicist today and much more other things. But I think he had a huge impact on my professional career.
What was the trigger?
I mean, he was such a fantastic teacher, and he was so into it. It was contagious. This is about health, right? Entangled Health. So it was a contagious physics virus.
So he gave you the mind virus.
Yeah, and of course, I've been fortunate. So I've been fortunate to be a CEO for 20 years in various companies. But since I'm more than 25, I've been fortunate to have CEO bosses as well. And I think I learned something from every one of them. So.
Good intention. I just have to open the workbook here. Good. So this is a question from Isabel from Paris, and she is asking, what's your favorite way to motivate yourself? What's your favorite way to motivate yourself?
I don't think I have a motivation problem.
That's a good position to.
Oh, really? I mean, I think the only thing that it's not something that I discovered. It's something well known. Is that you could build habits, right? Just like you wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth, and you don't even think about it because it's becoming part of what you do. Then one could get into good habits as well, whether it's exercise or, I try to. I think that a good day is a day that I learn something new. And if I didn't learn anything new, then it's okay, so one more day. So sometimes I go and say, okay, now it's night, and now I've got to understand this thing, because here's what I need to learn today. It keeps me sharp and interested and so on.
So you also work nights?
But I didn't find that I had to self-motivate.
yeah, this was also my impression that it's maybe a bit strange question for you, but it's anyhow. Yeah. So
Well, you can run the RNG again and see what happens. Right?
Should I? Let's do it in simulation. We don't have to wait too long. Just wait.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the best question? What's the best question you've ever been asked on this show, or on your show maybe? Or no? What's the best? So it's.
Well, I like to ask my guests about the hypothetical question,
Yes.
which basically goes like this. And finally, so if you were a guest, but finally a hypothetical. If you could have dinner with one of the quantum greats, dead or alive, who would that be? And so first, that's a litmus test for whether people have been preparing or not preparing. Because half the guests
I failed.
were like, I knew it was coming, and here's my answer. I actually had I was interviewing a guest that for the second time. Mm-hmm. He was already on my podcast. It was Helmut Katzgraber.
Okay.
Who's now a partner in a venture fund, and I previously had him when he was running the solutions team at Amazon. So it was 2 years ago. I asked him that question, and he says it's The Rock. And I said, really? Why is that? Because I think he was a man of few words. So a lot of people, when they think about someone they would like to have dinner with, they say Feynman. He was so boisterous and smart. And
Einstein.
Half the people say Feynman. So he said The Rock. So why is that? And he says, well, it's because Helmut likes food and sometimes goes and eats alone. And so someone that doesn't talk a lot at dinner is just fine with him because he just wants to focus on the food. So I asked him that again, and he gave the same answer. So half the people say, oh, I knew it was coming and this is my answer. And the others say, oh, such a great question, and then they think for a minute, which I usually cut out the minute of silence.
You cut out? Okay.
Because the audience says, well, what's going on? Is this still on, right? And it took a long while since I was asked that question back.
And?
It's not such an original answer, but Einstein, it took dozens of episodes until Einstein came up. And exactly for that reason, right? Because Einstein, besides being, of course, the physicist that we all knew he was, mm-hmm. he was an excellent violin player. Mm-hmm. And he played with Casals and with Rubinstein and with a lot of the greats.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that would be a fun dinner on many, many, many different levels.
I think he was even a good cook. I don't know. It really depends if you're more motivated by the food and then you go with Dirac, or
right.
more in the conversation.
You have Dirac, just be quiet and let me enjoy the food. Right?
I recall that you asked me and I said Bohm or Wheeler.
A year or 2 years ago, I was sitting at a table with Professor Pasqal mm-hmm. and Professor Aronson. And I just had Scott Aronson on my podcast, which was wonderful.
Yes, it was.
But anyway, I asked him that question. And I said, half the people say Feynman. Now, Professor Pasqal was a student of Feynman. Mm-hmm. So he said, oh, no, I had plenty of dinners with Feynman. And then he thought about it and said, actually, I would really like to have another one because there's so much that's changed. And I'd really like to see how he's thinking about what's going on in quantum these days.
Yeah. So before we kind of wrap up, just looking at the time, the tradition I want to introduce is sometimes when you're on a podcast, you have the feeling, well, why didn't he ask this? So is there something that you have always wanted to be asked, but never have been? And if so, just share it, and then I'm going to ask the question.
I mean, you're welcome to ask whatever it is you want. No, I don't think I've ever, thinking of food, right? Would you like some more? No, I can't think of something. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, good, because that's always a very good position to be in, to say, okay, there is nothing. So if now, let's say, a 17-year-old, these days, not so easy, decides for whatever reasons that they want to work in quantum because quantum is better than AI, let's just say. Is there something that you would tell them that you cannot put into a classic, or would not just do it as a commercial advice, but rather as a coach? Say, don't go there, right?
One reason, other than my high school teacher, one reason that I studied physics is really related to that sort of being the basis of so much stuff. It's if you can understand physics and math, then you can understand many things. And I think, at least in my professional career, the ability to be multidisciplinary. Now, people sometimes joke and say, a jack of all trades and a master of none, or in a mile wide and an inch deep. Every language has a way to say that. But I think that the ability to cut across various disciplines is truly useful. Mm-hmm. And for me, whether it's writing words or code, and marketing and interacting with people, and then of course the science part, not to mention we spoke about sort of the artistic diversions and so on, I think is very good. And I'd rather that person, I would suggest to that person to learn something that could be universally applied, as opposed to, I want to learn machine learning right now, because who knows what machine learning is going to look like in 3 years, not to mention in 30 years. I do love mentoring. I went to a certain program in university, and a couple of years ago, they started having mentors and mentees. So they basically said, well, all of those that went to this program in various years, if you want to be a mentor, if you want someone to mentor you, then we'll pair you up together. And I've done a few of those. And they're fascinating. It's fascinating, right? part coach, part psychologist, part just listening. There are rules on how to be a good mentor, right? You're not that person's boss. You don't tell them what to do. You're not their psychiatrist either, right? You don't have to psychoanalyze them. Not that I would know how to. And so, I love mentoring, and that's what I would tell a younger person.
And do you? So you said you have mentored many. So are you staying in contact with your mentees, or
sometimes? Yeah, sometimes, and it is of course a very pleasant sort of experience, because there's no a priori expectation. That person doesn't owe you anything. You don't owe that person anything. You're just here to have a conversation. Many years ago, I led a team, and then from that team, in years after, this guy became a CEO, and that guy became a CEO, and this guy. So I was like, yeah, if I had a small part in, maybe I just chose well to the team. Maybe I didn't do anything to advance their career. They were smart people, and I thought they would be good. But that certainly was satisfying to see how well they have done for themselves.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And for just to wrap up, so if people want to find you,
LinkedIn is usually a good place.
Yeah. And the Quantessa comic?
Quantessa, just go to quantumbitscomics.com.
Okay, so we also link that. So something you want to ask the listeners to do? Maybe like or share?
I think that, go and subscribe. It's free, but go subscribe to the Substack or Quantum Bits Comics. I should open a mailbox for Quantessa and another one for Atomique, so people can ask them direct questions. As you know, these characters, sort of after a while, they take a life of their own. Yes. They just, it's like the Frankenstein moments. Like, what can I do now? As you were saying, does she need a date? Is she getting married? Where's the cat? what's going to happen next, right?
Did they surprise you already?
Well, because the workflow is substantially AI assisted, of course, I review everything. That's why I printed out this version. And, so for instance, I have to make sure that nowhere in the comics it says that a qubit can be 0 and 1 at the same time. That I would get barred from any quantum discussion if that was in the book, right? So sometimes the jokes, I find some of them funny. Doesn't mean that others will, but for example, oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's a cool image. That's a cool joke.
And then just build on it.
I mean, not that I'm comparing myself to him or anything close, but I think Arthur Conan Doyle tried to kill Sherlock Holmes many times unsuccessfully.
Unsuccessfully.
Sort of was forced to bring him back to life, right?
On this happy note. So thanks very much, Yuval, for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Thomas. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, dear friends, we are now entangled. And that's where we leave it, inside the question. I don't know what this opened for you today, but I hope something did. If a question is still moving in you, sit with it a little longer before you decide what it means. Stay kind, stay curious. Until next time, and keep exploring the unseen.